Welcome back, everyone, to Monday Afternoon Roundtable. I don't know what episode this is.
I don't know.
Season 2.
Season 2. Well, it's really probably, we just started our season 2 and we started having some problems, technical problems, and neither of the three goobers sitting up here can do anything technical. So our technical guy's been busy doing other things, so we're trying to put everything together with the technical problems we've had. Plus, we've been
working
crazy busy.
Yeah.
Been scattered. Everybody's going in different directions.
Right. And it's a good thing, and we're not complaining about that, but we miss doing our podcast because that's something that we enjoy doing, or I really enjoy doing every week. But we're going to try to get back in the groove and get things rolling again. We're going to try to do a few different concepts than we've done before. We got a good drink we're going to do last call with, and we're just going to kind of blend that in as we go. But today's segment is going to be about the September 11th, 2001. And today's date, we're about a week out from that now or two, but we all remember that date. We were all three still in law enforcement at that time. And especially Tim there at the Duke Energy at the nuclear plant.
I was at the sheriff's office.
Oh, were you? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought, okay, that's right. And you were with Lincoln?
No, I was at
Sheriff's office at that time, too?
Yeah.
Well, damn, where am I been?
You've got 2001. So
I know.
That's 22 years ago.
God, it doesn't seem like it. Just going back to that time, I was working. I was in a meeting at the DMV headquarters in Raleigh. We were doing something. I remember Basil McVeigh. You guys remember him? He was there. We were doing a computer programming project together. But a trooper pulled up, which I thought was odd. At that time, we didn't carry walkie-talkie or any of that, and my pager or my phone had gone off, but I had it set aside because it was a meeting. But a trooper pulled up, and he came in and motioned me to come outside, and I walked outside, and he said, a plane just hit one of the twin towers. Well, in my mind, it was a Cessna, little small plane, somebody off course, or somebody committing suicide or whatever. And so I said, okay. He walks back to the car. It wasn't 2 minutes later. He pulls back in, and he motioned, and I was still, trying to pull it up on the phone. And he said, Major, another plane has hit the other tower. So I knew then something bad was going on. And then, so we all got together from the state level, and really we didn't know what to do. Nothing like that ever happened in my lifetime, and certainly didn't happen in yours, but it was unnerving. What were you guys doing at that time?
You want to go?
I was on night shift, so I was in bed asleep.
Oh, wow.
And I woke up.
Something woke you up, just didn't.
Woke me up, so I couldn't go back to sleep. I'd been asleep about 3 hours. Turned the TV on, thinking it might help me go to sleep. And I had it on the news network, and I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
One plane had only hit, and while I was laying, I said, this is bad. And then the second plane hit, and I said, oh, my goodness. And come within an inch of getting out of bed and going getting Garrett. He was in the first grade. I said, I'm going to go get him, But I didn't. But I don't know what woke me up either.
That's weird. What were you doing that day?
I was working. I was a dare officer, and I was on Abington Road on my way to Collettsville Elementary School. And it was 9-something. And as soon as I turned on Abington Road, this has never happened in my life before or since. I had the AM FM radio on, listening to music on my way in, and it stopped. The radio stopped, and it did a live feed from CNN. The DJ said, we're going to cut to CNN. There's breaking news that's very important. I've never had that ever happen, ever.
Right.
And it was just the CNN being on the radio where they said about the plane hitting, and they were saying, we're assuming at this point it was an accident. We don't know. We can't, blah, blah, blah. Well, I got to the school probably 10 minutes later. And in the office, they were pulling in one of them TVs, where they could watch it because they were note about it. Well, we're sitting there watching it live, and the second one hits. And right then I said, oh, shit.
Yeah.
I remember telling the secretary there, I said, every major city needs to be on call. Something's going down, something. You ain't going to have two accidents happen at the same place. I said, this is going to happen in other cities like Chicago or so. That's what I thought. And I told them. And they were trying to figure out what to do because they were getting parents calling, kind of saying, and they were trying to figure out, well, what do we tell the kids? Do we tell the kids? Do we let parents come pick them up? You know what? So everybody was in chaos. So basically, we were on just autopilot, doing what we're, and then between every break, all the adults would meet where they could. You know, what's next? You would go to the office and see what was going on. By the end of the day, you had the Pentagon and the one crashing in Pennsylvania.
Right.
Then I remember regrouping, getting off work, and meeting at mom and dad. I might have been living there in between apartments. I don't, for some reason. And
yeah, you were fairly young.
Yeah, I was, and it was all on the news, and it was just, I mean, it was insane.
Nobody knew what to do.
No, and you didn't know what was going on. Nobody had ever heard of Al Qaeda, Taliban, or Osama bin Laden. I mean, maybe the Pentagon people or the CIA, but not normal people.
Correct.
So it was.
Which brings up another issue: all the conspiracy theories that have gone on since that happened, and the fact that they did know about Al Qaeda and the Jihad and all the other nations out there, groups that were anti-American or against our democracy, and they didn't let people know. And that was one of the issues prior. The only thing good that come out of 9/11, in my opinion, was the communications between agencies. They improved.
I agree.
By 100%.
But between state, federal, local, everybody.
We could communicate on the same
even between fire and police improved.
Yeah. And as we were talking about off mic before, Jason, our communication system was behind the times at that point. And after that happened, we were able to get a lot of federal money in to bring that communication system up to speed. We went from a high band, low band frequency to a 800 megahertz frequency with everybody in the state on the same radio frequencies, and that really helped our communications.
Another positive that came from that was I think law enforcement learned a lot from telecommunications and fire services on incident command, because I never even heard nobody. I thought, what the hell is incident command? You know, other than you having a command post and somebody in charge telling people what to do. But we learned to work together on, you know, like you were talking about, all the first responders and communicators all together, and setting up a instant command, and the NIMS and all that stuff.
But the biggest foobar in the whole situation, you know where the command center was for the Twin Towers when it happened?
Probably in the Twin Towers.
In the damn Twin Towers.
Yeah.
But they didn't understand the concept of infrastructure and the way the building was built. And a lot of conspiracists say, oh, those buildings didn't fall. They couldn't fall. There had to be an implosion or explosion below to make those floors fall. Well, the architects got together and for the 9/11 commission report indicated no. When those planes knew which area to hit, and they were pretty close, and for amateur pilots to hit where they were supposed to at high speeds, they were going to max speed, those planes would go pretty much. And when they hit those in the 90th top floors, all the fire, the fuel,
and they were all full of fuel.
Yeah, and when one floor collapsed, the second floor did third, and then it was just a accordion effect after that. But can you imagine being in one of those buildings and the police officers and the firemen, especially the fire personnel, were running into those buildings? They didn't even think about that. Or they wouldn't have gone in. Of course, maybe they would have. I don't know. But it was just a bad situation. When I was watching on CNN, just like everybody else, when I saw that tower collapse, I thought the same thing. I said, "Man, there's no way that could have happened." In my simple mind, but I was able to get a copy of the 9/11 Commission report, and I've read it. And it's pretty interesting, and it talks about everything from what went wrong. The communications between the CIA and the Secretary's state offices and different worldwide investigative services we have throughout the world they kind of knew that something was going to happen, but they didn't let people know, sort of. I mean, and the commission report talks about that. But I think that brought out now anything they hear, pretty much they let people know. So, and we have state officers working with federal now, the task force, and that's a good thing that come out of it. We're sharing information back and forth. But there was 2 airlines, United Airlines and American Airlines were the 2 airlines used. And I think 2 of them flew out of Boston airport, and but then the Flight 77 and Flight 175 are the 2 that hit the Twin Towers. And then the other one hit the Pentagon. Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen the video, the security video of that?
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's one of the security cameras outside, and the plane's coming in so fast and hard, it hits the ground and pretty much skips into the Pentagon on that one side, and it happens so fast you can't even hardly see the plane. You see the explosion, of course, but you can't see the plane very much. And that opened up a door for another conspiracy theorist too. And then the one in Pennsylvania, Shanksville, Pennsylvania, that's the one with the guys on board that
civilians
said, screw this, we're going to get this plane back. And I think their method of operation was the terrorists, once they got on the plane, some of them had 4, some of them had 5 or 6, I think, on each plane, but they just overtook the pilots. And at that time, all you had to do is open the door. There was no security mechanisms on the doors for the pilot. And the one plane, they cut the pilot's throat and just threw him out in the first class. Yeah. And they see all that, and can you imagine being on one of those airplanes just for a second? But those guys on the one in Pennsylvania, they knew that already people were calling on, and they said, shit's getting ready, something's happening. So they knew, and so they got together and they said, screw this, and they took control.
Can you imagine what would have happened if the one plane successfully hit the Pentagon like it was supposed to, and the other one hit the White House
like it was planned to do?
Yeah.
And that's probably where it was going, most likely.
Well, that's what they speculate.
Yeah. But can you imagine being with the Secret Service at that time and all this stuff coming in and trying to get your people out?
And the president, he was in Florida, was he not?
Yeah, he was school when
he was out of elementary school.
You remember the video? I mean, it showed the gravity of it when the press secretary tells him what happened. And you can see the look on his face.
Right.
He has that old shit look.
He does.
I mean, I'm not blaming.
Like the rest of us.
And so you knew right then, this is bad.
But I admire Bush for taking. He didn't overreact.
No, he didn't.
And
he did a great job.
He's he kind of like, okay, what am I? He
Take
thought
the
about it.
And then the next step was to get every plane in America on the ground.
And they did. And that was the weirdest feeling, because living in Raleigh at the time, you see planes all day, and it was just weird.
And they kept him in there.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Mm-hmm. With an escort.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, he probably couldn't have, and then they put him in the air after that and just flew him around, basically. But it was just a bad situation, and we'd never experienced anything like that other than Pearl Harbor was probably the next closest thing. But it was just an attack on our way of living and our way of life, our democracy. Our government.
Everything changed that day.
It did. Yeah. I flew on September 9th. I was flying, so it wasn't far from that point in time. But the way the TSA administration changed, security at the airports changed. Had we tried to do that prior to 9/11 happening, oh man, people would have gone crazy, because you pretty much walked on an airplane.
Oh yeah.
Box cutters, knives, whatever you want.
And that's what they had.
That's exactly what they had. Yeah. And that was not an item that was checked prior to that. And now you have bad breath, you're going to get checked. And if you like me, I went to a shooting range one time after 9/11, and I thought I had gun residue on my hands.
And it picked up.
Yeah, and it picked up big time. And luckily, the TSA guy that checked me that day, he took me to another room. He said, have you been to such range? And I said, yeah. And it was a skeet range. I said, yeah, that's where I've been. He said, it happens all the time. He said, just wash your hands really well and all this stuff, and everything checked out. But it changed the way we do business, and especially in law enforcement and flying and everything else. So, can it be different? Could we have done a better job? Yes, we could have. But I think America come together during that time. Which
you put a thing on Facebook a couple of weeks ago of September the 12th.
How everybody was.
It didn't matter if you were Democrat, Republican, Independent. It didn't matter. You were an
rich,
American,
poor, black, white.
We all come together. and sometimes that's what it takes. But it did rally. Now, some of the conspiracy theorists seem to are saying, okay, we needed a war because we needed the war machine back up because, the last one we'd had was, Iraq or wherever, and the war machine needs that. We got to have that. So they created a war. Now, if you look, most of the terrorists that were used that day were not from Iraq, Iran,
Saudi Arabia.
They're Saudis. And most people don't understand that and recognize that, and saying we still treat the Saudis like
they're gold.
Yeah, and because they have so much oil productivity
Their
and
human rights things, they killing the killing the journalist and would baby them because I've never understood that. And it didn't matter who was in charge, what party or what, both parties and all presidents have always babied the Saudis. I don't get
that's
it.
true.
Think about this. I can remember going back to work that night, and we never had a call.
Yeah.
I was like, say something wrong. We have never had a 12-hour
Everyone was
shift.
scared. Everyone was scared.
A 12-hour shift and not have nothing. I'm like, I don't,
Everybody was glued to the TV.
And everybody, like you said, the next day everybody came together as Americans, and everybody treated everybody well.
I remember Daddy ordered had Pam, our sister, she worked at a company and they build steel stuff, and he had her bring him the flagpole. You remember a real flagpole, not one you put on the side of the house, but a real one.
Right.
And put it up, and we got an American. We had to wait in line to get an American flag because they were selling out.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody was getting the magnets put on their car with the American flag, and everybody. It was amazing. From a tragedy to see that, everybody coming together.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it didn't take long to get back screwed up.
No, but that
Not 2 weeks.
yeah.
Well, I guess about 3 maybe. But it was just one of those things that, that it happened during our lifetime. I wasn't born during Pearl Harbor, and everything was pretty much easy until then, and then it just changed the whole scope of everything. But being a police officer after that was kind of, I remember we had to do a continuity of operation plan for the state. Well, government had to continue, business has to continue, but we had to narrow it down in case something like that happened again. Who's going to work? Who is mandatory or critical, and who's not? And I had to go to every state. Well, I just remember being in that meeting, the governor's office and all those people in there, and our secretary at the time, the director, basically says, okay, Monday's going to head this up, da-da-da-da, and that was the first time I'd heard that. So I had to go to every state agency and and put a plan together on who's critical, who's not, which building infrastructures are critical. Of course, ours was, and then the nuclear commission. We had to work really close with all those nuclear plants. Which how many we got in North Carolina? 10, 4, 3, 4, or just 2? 3. And because that, of course, was going to be a target.
And Charlotte, the financial epicenter,
Yes.
they said it was always a target.
And we just had to put everything, and I worked and worked and worked. And now being able to do that, our secretary was part of the national group that was called in. So he was giving me information, and he's going, there's going to be an attack in, I guess, Baghdad at a certain time or a certain day. And damn if it didn't happen during that time frame. He said, this report, you got to have your stuff ready to go before then, because then that's going to produce retaliation. And I just remember saying, God, we're not going to make it. I'm not going to make it, because we had so many more to do. And I remember going in, calling in our collision reconstruction team. I brought every one of them in, and those guys and girls are the ones that put the report together, because they're so good at doing that. They put the photographs and the digital diagrams that needed to go in with everything, where our checkpoints were going to be, who's critical, who's not. And without them, I couldn't have done it. But they worked hard and was able to put the reports together. So anyhow, that's a whole different story. But it just changed the way we do business. And if you ever get a chance, look at that 9/11 commission report, because it kind of, one thing it did as well, this was a bipartisan commission, of course, and they worked together to put together something that a report that was true and accurate, and it talks about the conspiracies, and it tries to counter each one and say, no, this sounds accurate, but it's not, and here's why. And so, but you're going to have conspiracy theorists in anything and everything every day. So it was just a little bit weird, but.
Me and Shelly and the kids went to New York City a couple years ago, and we got to see the site and the memorial, and it's something to see if you've never seen it. But what really got me was you'd see the fire trucks from different stations, and they'd have the nickname of the station on it, and then they would have names. Every fire truck or any kind of apparatus related to fire had a firefighter's name on it. That was, or multiple ones, depending on,
Yeah.
So and we were in Times Square a lot of the time we were there, and that is probably the safest place on planet Earth. You've seen New York City police officers everywhere,
Right.
everywhere. I mean, we saw a shoplifter get arrested, and they went in, they had 4 officers with them. That's because that's how many saturated officers they have.
Correct.
Because of, to keep it safe.
One of the conspiracy theories that I thought was debunked pretty quick was the insider trading with American and United Airlines people, because your stock goes up when there's times of trouble with a company. And I didn't realize that either, but that was one of the things that there was a lot of trading going on right prior to the 9/11 with the airline industry, which was a little bit weird. And I didn't know that when I was looking at the research and the what we were going to talk about. But there was a lot of publicity about it. But they said the air defense was told to stand down, which the 9/11 report kind of debunks that, that they put them in the air as quick as they could, but they really didn't have. They turned the terrorists knew how to. They had enough flight training how to turn all the mechanisms off where they weren't tracked as easy. And if you ever looked at I've got the app on my phone where I can see military aircraft and commercial aircraft, and it's just thick with airplanes, and how those poor flight control people were able to. They expected them to contact air defense. Hell, they didn't know what was going on either, and they're trying their best to figure it out. And I'm sure they did quickly, but what they did, in my opinion, they saved a lot of people's lives too. Like Tim said, ground those planes, get everybody back on the ground.
You've heard the stories of some of the passenger jets had to land in Canada.
Several.
And
Nova Scotia.
The towns didn't have restaurants. They were so
that's
small.
right. Yeah, and the families took
everybody
them
cooked
Yeah.
and brought food to
I do remember
that small airport to feed those passengers.
That's the same place that a lot of the passengers from the Titanic were taking. The same thing when that happened. Took them to Nova Scotia, and they did when that happened. What 1914 or whatever year it was, 1908 or something. They came together as a community to help the people, and they did the same thing for 9/11, which was just. I think that would happen again in Canada. You can't beat those people up there.
Let's do a toast to the fallen.
Yeah, and there was over 3,000 people killed during 9/11. We didn't even talk about that, and my apologies, but there were so many people killed. A lot of those people being first responders, but many were just people that went to work that day and just didn't come home, and they didn't have a clue that their life was going to end that day in a tragic incident. And there was a lot of people that jumped out of those windows, and we all saw that on CNN and all the news networks back then. But it was tragic. So, yeah, what have we got today, Tim? Well, that's a big pour. Ooh.
Well, Scotch. Johnny Walker, Black Label.
Let me peep it over here.
It's a 12-year-old bottle.
Okay.
I'm not a big Scotch fan, but
Well, neither me, but it's 40% alcohol, 80 proof. Johnny Walker Black Label, blended Scotch whiskey. So, to the victims of 9/11 and those that survived and tragically died later through mental health issues that they had, physical contact they had with
lung disease.
Yeah. And we sent a lot of people up there after that. I think we sent 50 troopers right after it, and they worked in the morgue. That was their job. They had to help with the body parts and things of that nature, and because each department had different assignments. But it was those guys come back,
They say that to this day they're still identifying body parts. They know who all passed from it, but they don't know all the parts go with who. But they're still doing that. They're still in the process of doing that.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Oh, I'm not a Scotch drinker
It's a
either.
different flavor, isn't it?
Big
That's
time.
good.
It's a big difference.
It's pretty good though.
It's smooth, but it's a different flavor
Yeah.
than what we're used to.
I'm just old timey whiskey, I guess. But
I don't think I've ever drank Scotch before. I mean, it's a different.
A lot of folks or the vice versa. They'd rather have Scotch over whiskey.
It's not bad, but it's just it's different.
It's a good drink.
Here's some of the photographs from the Pentagon. It's just, I think they realized too late that when the plane hit the Pentagon, they didn't have enough forewarning to get people out. They were in the process of doing that, I think, but they just didn't have enough time, and of course, people tragically died there as well. So it was just a lot of things happening in a fast pace, and Alex Jones is one of the conspiracy guys.
He's a nut job.
And he is. So he talks about there was no debris field and things like that at the Pennsylvania site and at
The Pennsylvania
Pentagon
site was almost a mile long. The wreckage, on the ground.
Yeah, but it was well, I think it come in pretty straight down. The pilot, the terrorist, he nosedived it. He's screaming to Allah, and he just pushes it down. Now, one interesting fact that I didn't know during the research: the first plane that hit, the pilot gets on the intercom thinking he's talking to the passengers. This plane's being hijacked. We're doing this, doing that. And he was talking to the control tower. He didn't know. He got the communications mixed up.
Probably helped though.
Oh, it did. It helped because they going, oh shit, we got something bad going on here. And so, had he not done that, it would have probably been much worse. But it did give him a little bit of time there, where he messed up, and that was included in the commission report. But it was just a sad day for America.
I had the privilege to work with a New York officer that was there that day, and he was the lieutenant of vice. And by the time it took him to get to what they called uptown, the commander pointed to him and said, "You're over missing persons." He said, "No, sir, I'm vice officer." He said, "You're not now.
Yeah, everybody's doing
You're,
this.
you're in." He said, "Where do I set up?" He said, "Commandeer a building." Because everybody had ran. You couldn't even drive out of town. Everybody left on foot. All the taxi services were shut down. Nothing could move uptown except emergency vehicles. So he went and took over a building, and next thing you know, 10 or 20 other officers come in. 10 or 20 other officers come in. So we've been assigned to you. He said, "Why so many officers?" The next day he had 5,000 missing persons that hadn't made it home yet. And they were not. Most of them were not dead. They were walking home.
And I remember talking to you. I remember this conversation specifically. We were at Mom and Daddy's, and I told you, I said, "There's going to be 10,000 people dead from this," and there wasn't. It was almost 3,000, which is way. I mean, that's
you would think more,
but I would have thought a lot. I would have thought there's
with both of those buildings collapsing and the Pentagon.
All right, let's go into the political component just a minute with Mayor Rudy. He was America's mayor at that time.
That made him his heyday.
It sure did, and he saw the opportunity, which that's who he is, and that's what he is. But he rallied. He got the troops together, and the officers got behind him, and he what happened to him from then till now, I don't know. But I do know. But he, at that point in time, that's how he became America's mayor.
And regardless, he did a good job at rallying.
He did.
I mean,
he did a good job during that time.
Yeah. he did a great job at getting everybody saying, let's get organized, let's get morale up. We got a shit ton of bad stuff going on, but let's stay together.
Yeah.
And he did that.
And that made everything work better. I agree 100%.
Yeah. And then, of course, Bush went to New York City remember the fireman there at the Twin Towers, and I think he was a volunteer, actually, a retired fireman, an older gentleman, and he pulls him up to the side of him in the photograph session, and that guy just, like, okay, yeah, I'll do this. But it was the kind of the photograph of the century, really, because they're standing there with all that debris behind them, and they had to go through all that. And but you said you saw where the actual Twin Towers.
Do you remember all the sounds of the alarms going off on the firefighters?
Yeah.
That was sad. That was sad when you hear those. They're down, and all you do is tap it and you reset it. But when you quit moving, it starts giving the beep.
And the thoughts going through their minds, the firefighters or the police officers or anybody, they know they're going to die at some point before that happens. They know, hey, I'm in here. There's no way I'm going to get out of this. But they kept trudging on. And, there was whole battalions of fire battalions lost.
Yeah.
The entire battalion. That blows my mind. I mean, and to see them just rush into that to save other people, and they got the mindset, which is, if I save one person, it's worth it. And they did. I mean, they did the ultimate sacrifice. I mean, you can't comprehend what they did. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, the photograph where it shows the man or a woman, I think it's a man and a woman, that jumps from the 100th floor or whatever, and their bodies are coming down, and they have a still photograph of them, and that photograph's just sends cold chills up your spine when you see it. But it's those people were like, okay, I know I'm burning to death, or I'm going to jump. Which one? How am I going to go? And then you can hear remember they were doing a news story. A film crew was on scene. They were doing something, not about the homeless, but something going on downtown. And so they jumped into motion and said, okay, here, let's cover this. And those guys were in the Twin Towers. I don't know if you've ever seen it or not. It's a documentary.
Yeah, they were.
And it was a small company putting this together. And anyhow, they're inside, and you can hear, boom, just something hitting, and they didn't know what it was at the time, but to come find out, it was bodies hitting the plexiglass of the one of the awnings that goes over it. And so then the fire battalion chief says, everybody out. And I can remember that part of it, and everybody, because they realized then the infrastructure was going to fail, and but so many, they were in the stairwell, because that's how they were getting up to the floors.
I remember it was on a Tuesday when that happened. The Sunday after that, we went to church, and any Southern Baptist church, you hear the same 10 or 12 hymns played. They never get outside those 10 or 12 hymns. Never. We sang the Battle Hymn of the Republic that day, and I thought, man, that was something. It was just it.
Yeah. And it did bring America together for a short time, and I'll take whatever we can get, especially now. But we got one man that's trying to divide everyone, and he's being very successful. And that's not going. Some of our listeners probably not going to like me saying that, but that's just where we are. And hopefully, we will never go through anything like this again. But I think it's always in the back of law enforcement's mind. It's always in the back of intelligence officers' mind. What's going on internationally?
Well, and when I got the privilege of going to the bomb training school in New Mexico, and that was a result of the Homeland Security, all that grant. It was all free through the federal government. And they said if an attack ever happens again like this, they're going to the terrorists will target a small rural town. They might not kill as many people, but it'll cause more fear. That and it could happen again. But I think the government, our federal, state, and local, are much more on their toes to prevent, and are better at intercepting and letting people know as a result of the 9/11.
Yeah,
I think the next terrorist event will be at a major sporting event. Not necessarily a Super Bowl or a World Series, but let's take any game that happened this
Or a
last Sunday.
college football game. They got 100,000 people every
Easily.
weekend.
Yeah, Alabama or
Yeah.
any of these big.
Well, you got to look too. Soccer has grown so much in America now. The Charlotte group broke a world record for their first Charlotte soccer game attendance record.
How about those Atlanta Braves?
Oh, yeah, they're great.
Come on, Brad.
I'm telling you. Matt Olson, 54 home runs.
And our Commanders won.
Yeah.
They're 2-0.
Yeah, so we're
They tried their best to lose with the
and that's their motto. That's who they are. But it was I'm playing fantasy football for the first time this year, and it's like Tim says, more damn work than it is.
Yeah, you better stock up on some of this because it's
Well,
hard.
you got to do your homework during the week.
I don't know where I am in my stats.
And now you got to look too. NFL's playing on
Sunday, Thursday.
Monday, Thursday, and some out of the country games. You better
That's
be
right.
careful with those out of the country games because
Well,
they
the bye
come on
weeks-
at 9:00 in the morning.
I know. Yeah.
And if you're not ready,
See, that's where I messed up. I wasn't
You-
ready. And
you're
I was
not ready.
I was out of state, and one of my colleagues from the league called me and said, "Hey, dude, one of your players is on injured league."
Yeah, you better
But I
get
didn't.
some.
It already kicked off, so I couldn't do anything.
Yeah,
so I'm new to it, so I'm learning. But the award, we get a big chain necklace, gold, and it's pretty cool. It's just 10 guys, and we have a good time, and they're all good fellas and girls, and we just have fun with it. And this is my first year, so I'm a rookie doing it, so I'm learning. But I'll do it better next year.
Yeah, it's. I got my belly full of it. I probably played 7 or 8 years. I won the Super Bowl twice, but it's hard, and people take it too serious, and it took the
it's
fun
time
out of,
consuming.
Yeah, it did. It took the fun out of watching the game because you're watching players instead of
the
teams.
game.
Well, I showed up for the draft, and
The draft is the funnest part.
Oh well, I don't.
Yeah.
I was new. I show up and had a nice bar set up. This was all outside. It was a bar set up.
Talking shit to each other.
Well,
right?
I set my fat ass down at the bar because I was going to have me a drink, and they go, "Oh, dude, no,
it's all
that's the champions table.
hierarchy and-
You're- and I had a little bit like a children's chair. I had to
You're
go
the young
sit.
guy. You're the new guy. Yeah.
That's the oldest guy there. I had to go sit in that little baby chair. Oh, anyhow, I'm looking forward to it.
Anything on the agenda this week? Anything good?
Oh, I just got back from traveling. I went to see my little girl in Birmingham in college and went to see her for a little while and just got back. But I got a couple cases.
I got the attorney contacted Mark and I. Well, I got to go to Hickory and serve papers and then McDowell County.
Oh, that's a beautiful place.
Go to the ABC
I
store.
love
while you're there.
McDowell.
they got a super ABC store. or
Marion,
liquor store.
yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah.
Go back and get some good stuff.
I've got a murder case that I've got, and the attorney contacted me Friday wanting me to that we've got to meet with the DA's office in October, so I'm working on
That's good.
getting a prep on that. And I haven't said this publicly to any on social media or anything, but you guys know, I got my certified personal trainer license, so I'm doing an internship. That's right here. But I'm doing an internship, so I'm the world's oldest gym intern. I'm 50 years old, and the guy I'm learning from, he's in his 20s. Great. I mean, I'm learning a lot, but I want to get through my internship, and then I'm going to start wanting to train people, and
I think you'll be a hit.
people my age or older.
Old and fat people.
Yeah,
Like me.
exactly.
Well,
That's-
once they're through, like I said, once they're through with PT, their next step is to start exercising.
Well, and I know what it's like to be intimidated, go back to the gym, to be overweight, to be unhealthy. And I went to my 6-month checkup that I go every 6 months, and the doctor said I'm the healthiest I've been, and I've been going to her for 13 years, and she said
Good.
my numbers were the best they've ever been on everything. So she said whatever I'm doing to keep doing. So that was a good pat on the back, made me feel good. But that's one thing I'm doing, and I'm totally going to keep the PI thing as my main job. But this is just a supplemental kind of fun thing that I enjoy that keeps me motivated. And maybe if I make $1 or $2 extra, that's great.
Exactly.
Well, it'll help your mental state as well.
Oh yeah, I feel more comfortable mentally, than I've ever felt. I handle stress better than I used to. I've sleep better. I can concentrate better. Everything, it all trickles down.
I had a big settlement in one of my cases.
Yeah, that's
It
right.
was big time.
Huge. Yeah, talk about that a little bit.
It was and we're going to do law enforcement pursuits in probably our next episode, maybe.
Yeah, that'd be good.
And we're going to talk about the high liability and the civil liability that goes along with one of those. But it was a police pursuit that went south quick, and a young lady was killed. It was an off-duty officer that was killed tragically. Had a small 6-month-old child, and it went on for 5 years, I guess. And they finally agreed to a settlement a couple weeks ago. So we're finished with that one. So congratulations to them. It's just a bad situation overall, but law enforcement has to be responsible. And when you take on a high-speed pursuit, we just had one in our hometown.
Yeah,
or near it.
And we can talk about that next.
Yeah,
go into
it was
detail with
it
that.
was
Yeah,
extremely tragic.
That
But,
was the Hickory City case.
yeah.
but we'll talk about that one as well. But that's one of our upcoming episodes. This has been fun. We just wanted to talk about our 9/11 experience and what we were doing that day and how it affected our personal lives and our families and what law enforcement's done. And we just touched on it a little bit. But again, I urge everyone to look at this 9/11 Commission report. You can pull it up online and look at it. It's technical kind of reading, but it's interesting as well. Most people have forgotten about it, but anyhow, it's been fun. Look forward to the next episode. We'll try to have everything in better shape, and keep plugging in and tell your friends about it, and like us and all
Share
that
and
stuff.
like.
Yeah, and one thing, we probably won't be releasing it on Mondays like we were. We're just going to release it as we do them. So we'll just, maybe you can set it on your settings to notify you when a certain episode or a show has a new episode. So we can encourage you to do that.
Yeah.
And we'll put it out on social media that we got a new episode and all that stuff.
And we got some guests we want to bring on, and we got a couple cold cases we want to discuss involving law enforcement officers that have been murdered in North Carolina. The cases have never been solved, and we want to talk about those a little bit. But again, thanks everyone for joining us. Hope to see you next time. Monday afternoon roundtable. Thank you.
See ya.
Thanks.